the border to delay and we don't know if that's coming, in all honesty. And so what we need is for each of you to take a stand. Each of you and your family members and your neighbors to take a stand. To get more Texans registered to vote, to share information about how to vote with every one of the folks that we know in our community. Whether it's 2022, whether it's this fall,
And maybe someday on the back. All right, I promised you that I had a special guest. Before I bring her up, I want to recognize someone who has walked the talk, put their money where their mouth is, has helped to organize voters all around the state. Claude Cummings, ladies and gentlemen, is right here to your left. Claude, thank you for being here. And is now in the Senate, our great leader, Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman of this great community. Sheila.
Thank you so very much. It's me. I'm just trying to be a COVID-19 beat it to death example. So So let me tell you how important Beto O'Rourke's work is. We was just dancing. I know I saw you dancing. We had elected a president of the United States and a vice president. And you know what's good about that? None of us are perfect. But there's something all of our mothers have taught us and our dads. There's something about character and integrity. And even if you make a mistake or two, you have a mishap, if you've got morality and character and integrity, all of us can say, I got your back. That's what they have. But what we did is we got the grocery store workers. That's who work. And that baby is at this daycare center. And you know what? I stand with Joe Biden to be able to add infrastructure, the care economy, that people are taking care of the elderly, the disabled, or children. How dare you? How dare you? That's what happens when we don't vote or we don't have registration. Guns and death in Austin, Cleveland, Chicago, Savannah, and the list goes on this weekend. I'm not taking your guns away. I live in Texas. I know the Second Amendment. I'm just trying to say, do we need a permitless gun law so that we can have more folk just jumping out the window with a gun and coming after us? This is what happens when we don't vote and we are not registered. Sensible gun laws. Universal background check, stuck in the United States Senate, the minority leader saying not on his watch. Where is the morality? Democrats have to be able to bring it up. Where is, in this midst of a pandemic and this increase in domestic violence, where's the violence against women Act that I wrote, stuck in the United States Senate? Violence Against Women Act. Where is the support for the American Jobs Plan that will include the care industry, climate, infrastructure that is expansive, build back America so that we can compete with the Chinas and Europe and be the leader as Joe Biden did just a few hours ago, showing Europe that we can lead. That's what we want to do. That's why we need to dig deep. Don't let anyone say that Democrats cannot lead. Don't let anyone say that the members of Congress that happen to be Democrats don't represent all of their constituents. That's why we don't want them elected. Don't say that if he wanted to be senator or governor, that Beto O'Rourke could not represent the entire state of Texas. So I'm here today. I had this roll call as I bring him up, but I wanted you to understand, we cannot divide ourselves along the lines of people of color and others. I refuse to allow myself or any of you to do that. If we pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, it is a civil rights bill for all Americans. You know what? There are 10 states to have that bill, and the police are just as vigorous, strong, supportive, and defending and protecting as anywhere else. This is not an anti-police bill stuck in the United States Senate. Stuck in the United States Senate. Bills that say our history should be denied. Why shouldn't I know about Pilgrim's Pride? Teach me about Pilgrim's Pride. Why shouldn't I know that there was slavery, the original sin? Why can't I know about Cesar Chavez, who helped the farm workers? Why can't I know about what happened in Vietnam or the South Pacific? Why can't I know about the veterans of World War II? Why can't I know about my multiple history? Why can't I know about Cena's history, who comes all the way from Iran and ran for the United States Congress? How dare you deny our history? And so, the reason why I wanted to come today to bring up Beto, because I wanted you to understand that voting rights is not just, let me go out here bills to help you get where you are today. But as you well know, I've got to count on you. I need you. Our leadership needs you. And so as we roll across the state through Beto's great leadership, registering people in all parts of this area and the entire state, from east to west and north to south, as we not ignore the East Texas or West Texas, as we don't ignore the border between Louisiana and Texas, as we go to every look print, as we come to Fifth Ward with Barbara Jordan, Nikki Leland, walk these streets, who believe in that equality. Craig Washington, who empowered us through the criminal justice system. As we fight to help this little owner of the Gingerbread Community Child Care Center to take care of the children of essential workers, as we fight for the American Jobs Plan, as we fight for the American Family Plan, I want you to get to your feet, because you've got an instrument. I say in the church, they said an instrument of peace. You got an instrument of change. You got an instrument of movement, power, election, service. Get them out to vote. And that instrument that will help us raise our moral arc of understanding. Let us stand up, those who can't raise your hand. Let us understand that Democrats have to take America and raise America and build America back and make sure that America stands on the moral high ground, the moral high ground.
Grateful that you came out as Commissioner Ellis said, it's 100 degrees. The humidity is 1,000%. Yet we're still here, we're with one another because that we're okay, that that was the end of things. But those who understand their history understand that that might be just the beginning. Because when a big lie, like the one told by the former president about widespread election fraud in the last election, is repeated over and over and over again, it begins to be believed not by thousands, not by millions, but tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions. In 1923, a similarly clownish figure led another insurrection in Germany, another republic with a democratic form of government. And that beer hall coup was repelled, and that insurrection was stopped, and those seditionists were put in jail. But because the big lie kept being told, because so many believed and not enough people stood up to be counted and to speak out and to speak that truth to power, within 10 years that clown was Chancellor of Germany and would bring untold misery, suffering, death, and slaughter to the continents of Europe. And he is the man that brought those men from this community in 1944 to those beaches where so many of them were slaughtered in kind. That is the challenge that we are up against right now. I don't want to make this about politics. I don't care about the Democratic Party. I don't care about the Republican Party. I care about democracy. And folks, we are about to lose it if we don't stand up. That big lie that inspired the insurrection, that big lie trafficked by members of Congress in positions of public trust, like the junior senator who calls Houston his home, who voted to overturn that election after the Capitol was invaded. That big lie that asks us to look to Detroit, to Philadelphia, to Atlanta, to Phoenix, Arizona, to the voters in those communities and in those states that provided the margin of victory for Joe Biden, who happened to be voters of color, black voters in the first 3 cities, Mexican-American voters in the last one. That's where Donald Trump would tell you that there is widespread election fraud in this country. And inspired by that lie, 47 different state legislatures in this country have introduced voter suppression bills just like the one that was considered here in Texas. In Georgia, they passed it. It was signed by the governor, signed no less under a picture of a plantation with not a single legislator of color. And in fact, when a black state representative knocked on the door, literally to be asked to be let in, she was dragged away in handcuffs in the very place that she works. It's happening in Georgia, it's happening in Florida. It happened in Iowa and it happened in Montana, and they are pending in 40 more states. If we do nothing, we're not willing to sacrifice and struggle like those who came before, then all of those laws will pass, and this, what Abraham Lincoln called the last best hope of earth, will perish from the planet. And it will be you and me and this generation that lost it, and we cannot have that. Now let me tell you something. Those of you who are following this and care about this, and I gotta think you do or you wouldn't be here right now, you know that the situation looks dire. Though we have the leadership, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, to pass H.R. 1 in the House, though the president has said he'll sign it if it lands on his desk, this bill, the For the People Act, that would stop the voter suppression, that would restore our democracy and protect it for the generations to come, it is stalled out in the United States Senate, and for many, hope is lost. But I'm here to buck us up, and I'm here to tell you what we can do together to make sure that it passes. I'll tell you a story. In 1964, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Andrew Young went to pay a visit on President Johnson, our fellow Texan. And they said, Mr. President, in Houston, Texas, in Jackson, Mississippi, in Atlanta, Georgia, if you're a black man, if you're a black woman, you cannot vote in our elections. That poll tax applies disproportionately to us. That literacy test, it only applies if your color is the same as mine, Dr. King said. How many jelly beans are in the jar before you let me register to vote? They never ask a white voter that question. There are some counties, Mr. President, in Mississippi where African Americans comprise 90% of the population and not a single black voter is on the roll. How can you, they challenged him, call this a democracy when so many of us cannot vote? Mr. President, they asked him, pass the voting rights bill. And President Johnson replied, Dr. King, Mr. Young, you're right. This is wrong what you just described, and I would love to help you. But there is no way that the Congress of the United States of America, especially those Southern Democrats, will ever vote for a voting rights bill. I'm sorry, I'd love to help you, but I don't have the power. Dr. King and Ambassador Young left. And on the way out, a dejected Ambassador Young turned to Dr. King and said, what do we do now? And Dr. King responded, we go out there and we get the president some power. And over the next year, people just like you, in places just like this, took to the streets. They marched, they sat in, they lit up the switchboard at the White House, they called their members of Congress and the 2 U.S. senators from the state of Texas. They made sure that they understood